Hey, welcome to the West Barn. I'm Joe West, and today we're gonna do something really fun here. I've got a session that I'm gonna walk you through, all mixed in the box. What I'm gonna do is play it first from the beginning, so you guys can hear the song, and then we're gonna delve a little bit in a little further and look at some specific treatments I'm doing. It's called Apologize.
Hanging from a chain, on the back she engraved, may he watch over you and me. Lost innocence on a July night, in front of God and the fireflies, thought it'd last all eternity. Every minute, every second I keep playing it back, yeah, yeah. Stuck on repeat like an old 8-track. I give everything I got just to rewind. Hit pause and apologize. I ain't proud of what I said, sure ain't proud of what I did. It don't make no sense at all, no. I only want the best for you, don't know why I do the things I do. This whole mess is on my fault, oh. Every minute, every second I keep playing it back, yeah, yeah. Stuck on repeat like an old 8-track. Everything I got just to rewind. Hit pause and apologize. Sorry, baby. Give me peace. Every minute, every second I'm playing it back, and I'm playing it back. Stuck on repeat, stuck on. Oh! Ooh, every minute, every second I keep playing it back, yeah, yeah. Stuck on repeat like an old 8-track. I give everything I got just to rewind. Hit pause and apologize. Hanging from a chain, on the back she engraved, may he watch over you and me.
So there you have it. This is the song, you know, it's country, it's pop, it's sort of AAA. It's based off of a guitar vocal demo that I played into a little iPhone and then started building. And then I brought in a session band around that. So it essentially started off with me on vocals and my acoustic guitar. Then I started programming a little bit around it because I wanted it to swing a bit. Then I felt like I just wanted it to be a little bit more organic. So I brought in a full band, my normal Nashville session band. So if you look here on the screen, you know, up the top here, we've got a regular drum kit, kick, snare. I have a delay snare in here that's sort of doing an 8th note regenerated thing to swing it a little bit more. I've got some reverse little sucks, sort of that old school 80s rock thing in the choruses where it sort of makes the snare a little bit more impactful. Hi-hat, shoulder mic, that's just a condenser mic or a tube condenser mic over the shoulder and cardioid pointed at the snare drum. Very nice mic to just slide on up in. Overheads, which are C12s, nice large diaphragm tube mics. It looks like I replaced the toms on this with some bigger toms. And then the barn, of course, I put up a binaural pair of omnidirectional microphones in the barn about 20 feet away from the drum kit. So they'd sit maybe in this area, point at the drum kit, and sort of give a really nice, realistic, just room sound. This is the only 2 tracks. You could, in essence, make this drum kit in your bedroom up until there. I mean, there's room around it, but most of these mics are very tight, close to the drum kit mics up until you get to these barn mics. And then you can see I have programming stuff here. There's an 808 clap shot that happens in the first verse that I've kind of got EQ'd into like a radio sound. A hi-hat that just goes in there and does adds a little bit of chalk. Shaker that sort of carries it in regards to the swing, a 16th note shaker. Some reverse hits here. These are more like effect tracks to bring more pronouncement, to sort of bring more energy at the drop of the chorus here. You can see we've got this here, that all these things here are landing there. And that will sort of just make your choruses drop a little harder, give them a little bit more direction or a little bit more passion. Finger cymbal. Someone had given me a finger cymbal as a gift for my son at our baby shower. And it's this cheesy little cymbal, but it sounds so good. I use it on a lot of things. Really bright and present, lands right on the top of something. Very nice. These chimes are just a set of chimes that I'll double track and just add an ethereal vibe to the track. So all these 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, there's a snare drum and a tam hit, 7, 8 stereo tracks of just clap that sort of live, that are then sub-routed to this subgroup here. Bass guitar, it's a real bass guitar played by Mark Hill. Pad played by Jeff Roach, a great session player here in Nashville who comes up with non-traditional parts. He also played this arp here. He was in session for this, so we just took the outputs right from the keyboards and he did some arpeggiated stuff and some pad stuff. These are the audio files. I also have some MIDI files that I put in later with different arpeggiators. And this, the one labeled Whoop, is an upbeat thing in the chorus that just sort of added a nice little lift to it. A couple of electric guitars here, played by the one and only JT Cornfloss. Acoustic is me. Oh no, acoustic on this is Danny Rader. And the bouzouki is Danny Rader. A bouzouki is just, in essence, it's an octave down mandolin type instrument. It gets used on a lot of Keith Urban records. Very signature on top of things. It's a nice dimensional thing. This acoustic in the bouzouki in my mix, I've panned them wide left and right to sort of do a thing as though they were one instrument. Bunch of background vocals by Travis Thibodeau and a lead vocal by Travis Thibodeau. I eventually replaced my vocal on this. Travis is now singing and playing keyboards. He sings backup and plays keyboards for Journey. And then you have a little radio thing in the breakdown that I'm doing here that's off to the left. On Travis's vocal, I have the barn reverb. So I set up 2 U67s and Omni on each side of the barn. Then once I have the vocal comped, I'll go ahead and hit play once it's a perfect vocal, throw it out into the barn, and then mic the barn up as a chamber. All right, so let's go and let's talk about some of the things specifically plug-in wise in this mix. I always start off with the instrument that I wrote it on, or what I think as a mix engineer, what I think that person wrote the song on. If it's an Adele song, maybe it was based around the piano and a vocal. Or if it's something that I've written, it's more based around a guitar part. So I try to find what it is that was the center of that song, build from there. But I'm always going back to the drum kit. The drum kit for me builds like a foundation of space, a sense of space that is the illusion that you're creating. When you're mixing, you determine how big your frame's going to be for that picture, let's say. The drum kit for me is the biggest influencer of that. It's going to determine how wide it is, how powerful, the dimension and depth from front to back. All that comes from my drum kit. So I try to really get it to have the dimension. So that for me, it's the one thing that probably makes it sound more like a record than any one thing. Once you get that right, the things on top of it, it is like pulling a rabbit out of a hat. The sleight of hand that you're doing as a mix engineer. You really just need to make sure you're paying attention to the rules you're establishing in that mix. Let's take a listen to this drum kit together. I'm going to solo it all. I've got some weird subgroups, so I'm going to just poke on through here and solo them all. We'll talk about it real quickly. Okay, here you go. So now, right off the bat, you can hear that snare delay. See, I got it going through an SSL here. There's some Joe West presets in here. I don't know if I used the Joe West preset, but you see I got a bunch of 14K cranked in and a little bit of low end. And I'm hitting it with a little bit of expansion. That That's the delay return that I'm hitting like that. And here you go. I just like the way it gives it a little bit of spring. Keeps you going. It's almost like as if he had hit a lot of ghost notes. I thought it added a nice swing, so I kept that in there. It seems loud in the soloed section. And once again, I don't do a lot of soloing in my mixing. I try to get the mix up as a whole. And then, you know, I'll solo things to work on them specifically, but I always try to keep everything in as much as possible, just because it's not realistic. You know, what you hear soloed is going to have all these other things treading on top of it in the sonic spectrum. Kick drum has an SSL channel on it. Just some love down low. Gotta love that reverse snare. Overheads, I don't EQ them. You can see there's nothing on the overheads. The overheads are just wide open. They sound so good wide open. You know, that a lot of people have the philosophy of just cutting all the low end out, but I think it just adds to a really natural organic drum sound in a linear song like this, where I want it to feel like a drum kit. So the toms I've replaced here because I wanted really big toms, and for one reason or another, either when I tracked it, we didn't have a big tom sound, or there was a problem with them, or they just weren't giving me what I want. Usually I keep them, but in this instance I didn't. Every song is different. You can see I have a different tom verb set up. I have an Abbey Road plate set up for a big, just massive, when they hit, you feel them. They're dynamic, they produce a lot of emotion. And then I've got the barn here. I'm gonna go ahead and solo this again. We're gonna listen, I'm gonna be quiet, and I'm gonna just show you, bring in and out this barn. It really is a fantastic part of the drum sound. That's dry. I'll creep this in. You can feel it puts a space around it. And then you can just go to town with it. So, you know, you just feather that in wherever you want it. The other thing that is to take note with is, take a listen to just this shoulder mic. On its own, not bad. These drums are tracked in that little tiny ISO booth over there. I left the doors open to get to the big room for the room mics. But when you slide this mic in to the rest of the kit, it adds an element of believability to it. It takes it away from all those individual mics. You know, you think about a microphone being an ear, and if your ear's right up against a snare drum, like that far, it's not going to sound really natural. You bring them all together, and part of the crossbleed and the crosstalk of these microphones actually benefit one another and make it believable. But this shoulder mic in particular, I love to just slide it up into it. Makes me feel like I'm sitting in front of that drum kit. And it just takes a drum kit that maybe feels a little bit separate and brings it together. I'll show you sliding in. Right around there, I start to believe it. It's not necessarily something you'd want to crank all the way up and make a leading sound in your drum kit, but it still sounds good, but I keep it down just in there subliminally until I hear it doing the thing that it was intended to do, which is make that drum kit feel real to me. All these drums get subbed to a drum bus, and on that drum bus I've got, well, you can see on the barn here real quick. On the barn, I've got an H comp, which I'm hitting pretty hard, not crazy. I've decided to leave the attack not all the way quick. You know, I wanted to let a little bit through. And I just tweak it. I think I started off, with drum pump. You can see right here. And then I sort of just altered it until my ears liked it. But on the drum bus itself, I've got an 1176 blue phase. It's a little grittier. It's a little bit more gainy. And you can see it's all fast. The attack is very fast. The release is very fast. So I'm just touching it, hopefully. There's a little bit of compression on there. I'll do this every once in a while on a drum bus just to clean it up and make it sound a little more polished. Then I'm following that with some multi-band compression. So this is not parallel compression. The whole drum kit goes to a drum subgroup, and then that drum subgroup goes to the master. So I like using the too much limiting. I start with too much limiting and then I alter it. You can see I've added a little bit of sub in, a little bit of low end on it, and then you just play with it, and I've changed some settings on it until it's perfect. I actually have it saved as start here for me. It's a little bit different from the original too much limiting, but I think all these patches should save and come up on your computer if you're running Pro Tools. So that's my drums. Then I've got a whole myriad of just electronic drums. Not much to say there. I'm putting them in until they feel right. You know, they sort of carry the first verse, but after that, they're in essence, you can see there's really no EQ or no DSP on them here. There's a couple of things, but they are sort of additive. Once the drum groove gets going, they're just in there to sort of add some swing or add some character or just a little bit of I wanted it to feel a little more modern against the organic part of the track. You can see I have got an HEQ. I love the HEQ. I'm just taking away some stuff on that 808. I can't remember why I did this, but I did it for a reason. I'm a big proponent of taking off plugins if they don't make a real change, if they don't show a real change in my mix. And on the clap shot, you can see I've got that blue face with a little bit slower attack on this here. And then below it, I've got this Trans X Wide, which I love. This plugin, Near Z showed me this plugin, the drummer. And it will either add transients, but I use it more to take away transients. So you can see I took away some transients here on this for one reason or another. Sort of, it's not EQ, it's kind of like presence. It's like a presence knob. So the rest of this drum kit here is, some of it is finger cymbals, so it's not all drum machine. Coming all the way down here, and all of this drum machine stuff is going right to bus 1 and 2, which is my main out. These reverse hits are hitting a subgroup, but the claps go ahead and hit a subgroup and they end up living here. But as you can see, no DSP on that. My bass has an 1176. I really like the bass preset on this. It's a great place to start. Of course, you end up tweaking things from there, but I always start there. And it's a great sounding compressor on bass. I've got an X noise on this, so evidently there's some noise on this bass for one reason or another. I have some RF lights in the barn, so they might have been dimmed down and we're introducing some hum or buzz. And then I've got a guitar amp. I love these guitar amps. I have not used a real bass amp in years. It's so much nicer to be able to take each song and do the amp setting that you want for it. So, and I just start listening through the defaults, and then I find one that I like and tweak it. Really nice to have those defaults. As an engineer in the old days, when all I had was this gear, you didn't know where to start sometimes. So it's nice to have inspiration. Keep going down here, some pads, the ARP. I've got a Trans X Wide, taking off some of the transients on that ARP. Let's listen to that ARP. It's really a great part that Jay played. Just a great part. And these are the ARPs that I added. And then I've got this upbeat. Just something I added as I was programming. I just felt like we needed that on the upbeat. These are both using codecs, which is limitless. You know, I'll just start in here and you just start synthesizing. It's really a great program. You can come up with sounds that you're synthesizing them, so you can really get in there and make it your own. And these all sync to the session. Going down a little further, we've got electric guitars. JT Cornfloss here, great session guy. LA3As, love it. Just put it on there lightly. On this particular one, I don't usually put delays on the track, but this one has it. I put one on the track. It's a half-note delay. His other one, I just have an SSL EQ on. It was really muddy, so I went in there. I usually record the guitars with Royer 122s, which are dark and beautiful, but in this case, in this particular song, it wasn't speaking, so I went in and really did some, well, we're in plus 9 dB at about 1K. That is quite a bit. And I got a little bit of a high-pass filter going on it. Love the SSL bundle. I worked on E with G my whole life. I've worked on G+. I don't really prefer the G+ EQs. I like the black. They refer to SSLs, real SSLs, as brown knob or black knob. These black knobs, they're referring to the bass knob. And the brown knobs came before. They're a little noisier, but there's a different EQ sound on that low. I always preferred the black knob. That's what they have here. And these are just everything that an SSL did for me. I get the character out of this, so I'm really happy with that. Bouzouki in acoustic. Let's take a listen to these guys. Like I said, these guys work kind of in concert with one another. I've got them panned completely left. This is a bridge and neck microphone on the acoustic played by Danny Rader. And then just the neck, U67, on the Bouzouki pan right. So it's really nice. Same exact part, so it does this beautiful thing where it's just a total hook, and you got this dimensional thing where you've got texture and width to it as though it were one instrument. I really love that. You could see all I really have on the one is an LA3. And on the Bouzouki, I've got a little brightness dialed in with this HEQ. I find with the HEQs, it's nice because you can see where the frequencies are focused in your performance, so you can either enhance that or de-hance that, if that's a word. And then you have also the graphical, everything you're used to in a regular EQ. I find that when I use this EQ, a lot of times I'll keep going back to an EQ. I don't know what's different about this. But when I use this, I don't find myself going back. It's like, I'll take the mid-range, I'll find a mid-range I don't like, and I'll pull it out of an instrument or a vocal on a regular EQ, and I'll keep revisiting it because it feels too thin then, or then it feels too muddy, or I have to automate the EQ. This EQ is great because once you set it, it's like, it doesn't overdo itself or underdo itself. I don't know how to explain it. I just find that I never go back when I use these EQs. I use this EQ quite a bit on Joey Feek's vocal on the Hymns record, and where we were combining vocals from a lot of sources, and it really was an intricate part of being successful with that. And then it's being chased by an LA3, or CLA3. Then a bunch of background vocals, which are great. Travis is such a great singer. You can see they all have just regular compressors. A lot of times I'll just get a setting, you see they're all the same. And then I'll option drag them to the tracks and just use that, touch it lightly, and then hit it. On this one, since it's a new part, I think I'm hitting it with, this isn't limiting here, but I'm hitting it with a multi-band compressor, followed by this plugin, which is a great plugin. I use this a lot on vocals. So you can bottom up. You can see this area here is for bottom up. And then this area here, you could bring down the top like an L2, where it'd be like a peak limiter. And this will make up gain as well. So this is one that gets used quite a bit on vocals for me, depending on where they need to be in the mix and what role they need to play. A little bit of flanging on it. But this is an oldie but a goodie, the Medi flanger. This thing is, I've been using this thing for 20 years, I feel like. And then there's a Manny tone shaper on here. So, and those background vocals are a different background vocal than just traditional background vocals. You know, these are like big oohs that might be wider and a little more lush. And then I have what would be like, what I'd consider like a Rascal Flatts or an Eagles, kind of the harmonies that I'm going to place as a 3-part, that I don't necessarily want a bunch of stereo ones. I just want them to sit in different places. Those live over here, you can see. I think this is a unison part here, and then these 2 tracks here, these guys are more like, you can see they're panned sort of off 50%, a little bit more. They'll live on each side and sort of support him to give that sort of group sound, ensemble sound. And those are just going through some of the same processing. You can see sometimes I'll take out some of the transients on those just so they're not competing with the lead vocal. And that's what's happening, just a little tiny bit. You can see they're only going to be going down about 4 dB, 5 dB. So those are just to keep it out of the way of the lead vocal. So onto my lead vocal here. I've got an H comp on it. which I enjoy very much. I didn't really use parallel compression in my life. I kind of had some issues with it. You know, I felt like, oh, if I don't compress it and I have the two of the same tracks, you know, one compressed, one not, I worried about the transients from the one and maybe how it would play in small iPhones or if it would change my mix. But I tell you what, I've been using it quite a bit with this H-comp. It's built into it right here. You can say how much wet, how much dry. You can see I'm at 70% on this one. I enjoy it very much, and I use it quite a bit on this compressor. This punch knob is also great on the H-comp. I always audition that. If it's a drum kit, I'll drag it up and say, oh, that's what it's adding. Vocals. I find myself turning the analog off. I have a lot of analog gear. So analog just adds the hiss and the noise, the believability, and I've got enough noise. So I don't use that. And I'll go back and forth as to whether I'm using the host to determine my release time or what I'll do it manually sometimes if it's just something I want to shape in the mix itself. So I love this, I use it quite a bit. So you got that, and then I've got this Real ADT, which is a really cool plugin. I use it, if I remember correctly, I think it's coming in just on the choruses. So it just adds like a cool David Bowie Doppler effect. And you can see it sort of wrapping around here. You know, you've got the Vera speed, which is pitch deviation. It's going plus or minus about 30 cents on each side. Or, you know, I guess the offset would be, you know, closer to 10 or 15. But, you know, I just mess with that until it's right. I started with this one here. I think this, yeah, 2 driven vocals. I enjoy that. It's a really great place to start for vocals. But there's tons in there that are really good. It really will take a vocal that maybe is sitting and doesn't feel as kept or feel as polished, and it will give it a nice vibe in the chorus. And it does that for me on this song. So I used it here. This is just my effect vocal. This is the radio effect vocal here that goes on in the middle. My little dealio.
Every minute, every second, I keep playing it back.
EQ.
Stuck on repeat.
A lot of compression.
Stuck on repeat.
Some flanging. A lot of filter added to it. The one knob and an H delay. Just a little effect thing. This is the kind of thing you just dial in until that section feels like you want it to feel. Let's take a listen to it.
Every minute, every second, I keep playing it back, and I keep playing it back. Stuck on repeat. Stuck on.
That's something like the more I hear it, I think, oh, I may not have really pushed the opportunity as much with that. There's definitely a process vocal there, but it could be doing things where it's moving around with a Mondo mod or something. There's a lot of opportunity with that vocal to really do something special. I don't know that I got it all the way there with that. These demos happen so quickly, you know, and they sort of a snapshot of where you were when you wrote that song. But you're onto something new 2 days later. So as much as I love this song and I think it sounds great, and maybe it could be a final mix that would go to radio, sure could. There's probably lots of things that I'd revisit and maybe make a little bit differently. That's basically our song. I want to show you this chamber that I got going on. Solo it for you. This is the barn itself. I put a U67 on each side, like I said, and then I just solo the vocal through the monitor. I'm going to solo the reverb itself.
On the back she engraved, may he watch over you and me. Lost in a sense on a July night, for a guide in the fireflies. Thought it last only till.
So that's just this room, which is it's just great. I used to do it when I was working out of Pittsburgh at Audiomation, a studio there, a large format room. We'd put speakers out and throw snare drums or whatever we wanted to have a room sound on it. You know, there's been chambers, all these big studios around the world, these famed studios from the 70s where these great records were made. We either had real plates or they had chambers, concrete rooms underneath the building they'd throw things. Or, you know, I've seen corn silos that they've used, or big towers and castles that they'll put a mic up there. And it's really cool because, you know, this isn't a computer, it's just the room itself. I find that when I use this reverb, I'm always bringing it down because it speaks so well. All the points of diffusion, you know, it's so organic in this room. Ceiling is all unsealed pine, very soft. The walls are old 100-year-old hickory and walnut. So the room itself is a very warm room. So it's great to get it out there and just have it as a different palette, a different reverb. I've got, you know, a bunch of Abbey Roads on this, which are great, and a bunch of H verbs. I have this one H verb here, but a bunch of Abbey Roads, and I've got this chamber here that is the real one. They're all just, you look at a specific track and you say, how do I make this sort of sit into this mix and what does it need? I'm going to solo the lead vocal here. I'm going to show you, we're at minus 33 on the fader in Pro Tools on the return of the printed reverb.
Gold cross hanging from a chain, on the back she engraved.
It often surprises me that the barn, for as big as it is, sounds this small with 2 Omni mics. Each of these are probably, from where I'm sitting, they're probably 25 feet away from me, from the listening position. So very usable size reverb in modern music. And it's like I said, I just pull it way down, just so it gives it a little bit of size. If you'd solo it, you'd want it louder, but in the mix itself, it's right where it should be.
I give everything I got just to rewind. Hit pause and apologize.
So the last fader I have is my master. So all of my faders, the drums all go out to a drum sub, and that drum sub goes to the master. Every other fader in my session on this, they all go directly to the master. And on that master, I've got a 6-band limiter, multi-band limiter. And it's just riding on top of that, shaping it ever so slightly. I move these frequencies around, and see I put another little bump down here at 90 hertz or so, 95 hertz. Add a little bit of warmth. This is like an overall EQ that I'm shaping the mix with. It's a dynamic EQ. Happens over time through limiting. So it's really nice. And then whenever the band really joins in, you can see it drop down there, you know, and it's just this thing where the whole thing feels like it's on the radio just because each frequency section is kind of being controlled as a group, much like a broadband limiter on radio. Gives it a little bit of sizzle, a little bit of energy, makes the whole band together feel like they're doing something a little more. I'm going to go to a chorus and take it in and out so you can hear the difference.
Every minute, every second, I keep playing it back, yeah. Stuck on repeat like an old 8-track. I give everything I got just to rewind.
And as you can see, my levels aren't matched, but it really gives it a shape and sort of brings it into a controlled vibe. Things aren't flying out. I love to push that 2 mix. I love to feed things into it and push it really hard and give it shape and character and make the mix feel like it's doing something, like it's saying something. It makes it really sound like a record. This one plugin goes a long way in regards to making mixes sound like records. I always used to struggle with that early on, trying to get songs that after I had recorded a record, I'd say, it just doesn't feel like a record. It feels like a recording. And then you'd hear a record that really moves you and songs you identified with. But sonically, there was a signature there. And in the mix came together and made it sort of feel like a bigger, more epic consolidation of all those parts. This does a lot of that. After that, I'm hitting it with a Kramer tape. I really enjoy this as well. I've got this at 15 IPS right now, but I'm going to show you what it does at 7.5. It does something really cool. I decided not to do that for this song, but you'll hear the difference. It just sort of slopes off the high end, but it makes the mid-range speak very clearly. It feels like things are, you could point to them and say, oh, there's a guitar player standing over there, a mandolin player, a fiddle player, or a lead guitar player, or a secondary guitar. You could point right to where they're at. You must see them in a room. 15 IPS.
Every minute, every second, I keep playing it back, yeah.
7.5.
Stuck on repeat like an old 8-track.
15.
I give everything just to rewind. Hip hop.
So I love that. Of course, I have an L2 on it. This is just bringing up gain. I'm not doing any limiting on this. This is just to bring a general level up of the mix for me to monitor without having to crank my monitor. So this, in essence, is not used in this mix. That is, in essence, my philosophy behind this song. As the songwriter of it, I had a purpose for it, and continually trying to find out what a song wants to say. And my short time with this song, from writing it to making it into this demo, when I hit the space bar and printed this thing for the last time, it kind of said what I thought it should say. This song will go out and get played for people, and maybe someone will cut it, maybe they won't. But at the end of the day, just the mix itself for me, and knowing that the song felt realized and felt like it said kind of what I wanted it to say, very satisfying. I love that about music. It's its own reward.